Our next guest, I'm delighted to say, is joining us. We'll be looking at one of the big things and big themes, I think, this year, which is that big T word, trust, rebuilding trust. Please welcome to the stage here at the National Museum of Scotland, Dan Wilks, who is the research consultant at Credos, to present the latest research on public trust in advertising. Thank you, Dan.
Good morning, everyone. I'm sure you've all heard about how public approval of advertising has been in long-term decline for about the last 3 decades or so. But our regular tracking suggests that levels of favourability have actually recovered from their lowest point in around 2015. Long-term decline of favourability seems to have stopped. And the same can be said of trust. Now, indeed, around the proportion of the population that trust advertising is about the same as the proportion that distrust it, with a kind of larger group in the middle that neither trust it or distrust advertising. And the biggest difference in the population when it comes to this overall measure of trust is by age. Indeed, the scores are remarkable when we look at the oldest and the youngest people that we survey. Younger people are significantly more likely to trust advertising. And there are several reasons that we can point to for that, but the most evident seems to be attitudes to different advertising media. We have what we've termed a generational digital divide. Now, I hope you'll forgive me for these rather crude definitions of advertising media on this slide, but you know what I mean. And it works quite nicely to clearly illustrate this divide, whereby levels of trust and distrust, as shown on this slide, are broadly similar across all age groups when we're thinking about traditional advertising media. But in contrast, older people are significantly more likely to distrust newer advertising media. Now, that's just a very, very brief overview of where we're at in terms of current levels of public trust. But what drives an individual to trust or distrust advertising? That's what we were looking to find out and answer in our latest piece of research, The Drivers of Trust. But before I go into the details of those findings and talk you through it, we want to hear from the great British public about to summarise what we found.
Ready? Okay. It does make a difference, the big brands being on the mainstream shows like Emmerdale. You can trust them more, yeah?
I'm a member of the Caravan and Motorhome Club, so there might be something in here that I would find useful. I choose when to pick this magazine up, so I'm in control of that.
If you ask the majority of people to name a greeting card company, Moonpig will be mentioned, because that moonpig.com jingle has got a real hook to it, so I think they've done a brilliant job on that.
Night Trainer came out of a huge billboard for Air Max one day. It could have been like an art exhibition.
They've used imagination. It's really sweet and funny.
The main thing I like about it is that it just gives the brief perspective of different nationalities, different ethnicities.
Advertising can be fun, yeah.
Do you remember the Tango advert? So weird. That was amazing, and I want them to bring them back.
If an ad's funny, then obviously you'd speak about it to someone else.
Actually, why is a soap opera called a soap opera?
So that's all the stuff that I would Google.
Talk radio I listen to most, so that's obviously got regular advertising on it, making you aware of things.
Sometimes it introduces me to things that I'm completely unaware of.
A bit of joy, a little kind of inspiration maybe. I bought like a 2-piece clothing from this brand. Bought this from them, and I always kind of look on Instagram what they're putting out next.
Lidl's big today. I mean, I do shop at Lidl sometimes.
bought a holiday recently, a couple of months ago, due to a full-page advertisement in the newspaper.
How much of the stuff that you buy do you think is influenced by social media?
A good 50%.
Advertising on Facebook, it just pops up on your news feed. I don't mind that kind of advertising because it's one in a few posts.
Not interrupting my experience, not even a little bit.
It has the ad logo down there. You can just scroll past it, so like I can just do this and then it's gone.
I'm trying to work my way off newsletters. So that's given me a bit more of a sense of control.
If I don't like the ad, I do is just hold down here and then just put not interested.
I feel like when I'm out and about trying to get from A to B and enjoy my life, I'd rather not be bombarded.
I just dislike when it's constantly shoved down your throat, like buy this, buy that, buy this, buy that.
I quite like to read the film reviews and it's in the way, so sometimes I just do this.
This is one to do with classic Steam experiences. I don't think we even read that one.
I just cinched it.
4 minutes of adverts in the car is too long, I think.
Right then. Powered by BT. Limited availability. Check coverage at ee.co.uk/coverage.
It feels like they're trying to speed it up to get it out before you notice what they're saying.
My genuine emails get lost amongst the stuff.
And if I'm away for a few days, I've got about 50 of them.
Probably daily I get emails saying I've won $1,000 or whatever. I'm just like, okay.
But some of the scams are designed as adverts.
Well, I went online to book something and booked it on a kosher website, and then I was scanned by a follow-up WhatsApp message.
TV adverts are all on at the same time, so if I'm not interested and I flick over, the chances are I'm going to find another advert there.
But there's an awful lot on social media.
I watched like a 2-minute video on YouTube and I'm bored. Go on to the next video, it's like 2 minutes long. I'm getting the same 30-second ad again. I'm just like, oh.
There's a jewellery company that I see all the time and I keep saying I don't want to see this, I don't want to see this, but it keeps coming back.
It'll come up very loud on a website, for example. You have to look very hard for the little X button in the corner.
Dad, I'm hungry.
Right, what do I cook for tea? Okay, chips. These'll be good.
The chip advert had nothing to do with it and it wasn't funny.
Don't really necessarily want my phone to listen to my conversation.
Sometimes it's helpful because obviously I've been looking for that, but then there are other times when I think, right, enough's enough now.
It's quite clear that they don't use the products themselves.
Do you trust an influencer more than a paid-for advert?
Yes. If I go on something and I see they're being paid, I wouldn't really take as much notice as I would if they wasn't being paid.
I work with a lot of young people who believe what they see on social media, what influencers put out there, that they believe that that's, how every young person should look. And I think that that's really quite dangerous.
Do you think the advertising industry is regulated?
What do you mean?
I would like to hope it is, yes.
I don't think it is, no.
I don't know the ins and outs, not my line of work, and I just have a trust, a semi-trust, that the regulations are being adhered to, but I imagine the bar's quite low.
I'm not sure who regulates the advertisers. I'm assuming it's a company.
Well, there's the Advertising Standards Authority.
Have you ever heard of the Advertising Standards Authority?
I mean, probably.
Nope.
I don't know how I've heard of them.
Yeah, I guess they're the people that monitor content, a bit like a film censor. I don't know whether advertisements have to go to them before going to air, or they monitor things once they've gone to air.
The Advertising Standards Authority regulates UK ads wherever you see them, or hear them.
They're raising the standards of adverts, they're making sure that they're morally right.
That's reassuring that actually they're not firefighting, they're being proactive.
If there was a free-for-all allowed, we would get lots of inappropriate advertisements.
Maybe there could be more done to encourage people to contact them.
I think they could be probably advertised a lot more.
People need to know if there's ads that they don't like or ads that they find harmful or, just misrepresentative or anything. They need to know where they can complain.
Okay, good stuff. So the research that was summarised so well there by the general public, it consisted of a nationally representative quantitative survey of the UK population, followed by an in-depth qual phase to unpick those quant findings. Now this study updates previous work to measure drivers of trust, and in 2018 and 2021 using similar methodologies. The first findings I really want to draw to your attention refer to three overarching themes that underpin public sentiment towards advertising. The first is worldview, so essentially how people feel about living in a consumer society. For those people that are comfortable or at least uncritical about that, advertising is a good or a fact of life. On the other hand, there are those people that are skeptical or opposed to the way the society is organised, and for them, advertising is at best a necessary evil. The second theme is media socialisation. So older people grew up in a world with static media that was largely unchanging. For them, the deal between consumers and advertisers was very clear, and it remained the same. However, for younger people, they've grown up in a world that's been supplemented by ever-changing web-based media, and their attitudes and expectations of advertising are set by that. The third theme is definition. So the general public have a much broader definition of advertising than we in the industry do, and it includes everything from window displays to packaging to sponsorship to scams. So what are the drivers of trust? We applied a factor analysis to the quantitative results to identify highly correlated groups of responses. And these groupings are consistent with what we found in 2018 and 2021. And they include 4 positive drivers, which are driving trust in advertising, and 5 negative clusters driving distrust in advertising. Now this slide shows the importance of each of those clusters, its percentage impact on trust in advertising. Now, the results in 2023 reveal a pattern of back to the future where they are very similar to 2018, suggesting a significant COVID effect on those 2021 results. Now, what we found is that advertising benefits and its importance in driving trust has declined slightly since 2021. Bombardment remains the #1 driver of distrust. Suspicious advertising has also decreased, whereas the importance of data privacy in driving distrust has increased, returned to 2018 levels. As we saw earlier in the presentation, when it comes to trust in advertising, the difference between old and the young is significant. Bombardment is now the #1 driver of distrust for the younger age groups. That replaces suspicious advertising and marks a significant change from previous years. Vulnerable groups remains a considerable driver of distrust for those aged over 55, but is much less important for the 18 to 34-year-olds. And this increase that we're seeing in data privacy and concerns around that are largely being driven by the middle age group, the 35 to 54s. And I'm going to talk about these in a little bit more detail, and let's start at the top. These are advertising's benefits, the drivers of trust. As you can see, the biggest one there is the enjoyment and the entertainment value of the ads themselves. That single factor is the most influential driver in this entire study. That's followed by the social contribution that advertising can provide, the information around new products and services, and finally, the value exchange. So as mentioned, the quality of the advertising in terms of its the creativity, the emotional engagement, and the entertainment value is the most important driver in this study. Ads that fall into this category are characterised by one of 3 things. The first is a strong narrative, not just functional messaging. People love a good story. The second is emotion, usually humour or poignancy. And the third is a creative, innovative idea. This is usually in the form of advertising as art and something that just blows people away. Simply put, the more someone likes or enjoys an ad, the more likely they are to trust it, which is why it's so important that you let people enjoy your advertising. Social contribution, that has also become an increasingly important driver of trust. Now, whilst not necessarily front of mind for the average consumer, when probed, the majority do recognise the positive role that advertising has to play in areas such as diversity, public health messaging, and environmental sustainability. Okay, so we've looked at the positives. Now, here's the negatives, the drivers of distrust. As you saw, bombardment is the #1 driver of distrust, followed by advertising to vulnerable groups, data privacy, suspicious advertising, and interesting to see that advertising of HFSS and alcohol, which makes up that unhealthy category, is of much less importance to the general public, certainly in terms of trust. Okay, so bombardment. Those people who identify bombardment as an issue are the most likely to distrust advertising. When asked to rank the 4 elements of bombardment, obtrusion, so the delay or interruption of the content experience, is the biggest annoyance by quite a long way. That's followed by repetition, volume, and irrelevance. Now, the rank order of those 4 elements remains the same regardless of age, but the nature and level of annoyance does change. So obtrusion is the most annoying for the 18 to 34-year-olds. And goes a long way to explaining why bombardment has become such an issue for that age group. For older people, being interrupted by advertising was a long accepted part of the ad deal, but that's not the case for younger people. They are less used to being interrupted by advertising and feel they are being interrupted more now than they previously were on the platforms that they use most. Repetition, on the other hand, is most annoying for the over 55s. That's because they consume a smaller pool of advertising, so are therefore more affected by it. Likewise, volume and irrelevance is also more annoying for the over 55s because they have witnessed what they consider to be an explosion of advertising content over their lifetimes. Now, concerns in relation to advertising to vulnerable groups has 2 core facets. The first are those what we might term risk categories, such as gambling, alcohol, HFSS. But they vary significantly by category, from person to person, and are closely linked to an individual's worldview and also influenced by media and current affairs. A second, and much more widespread concern relates to web-based advertising. And divides along generational lines, whereby younger people worry that old people are not digitally savvy enough to spot online scams and to know what is or isn't advertising. Whereas old people worry about impressionable youngsters being exposed to misleading ads on social media. Our quant data revealed that in regard to 35 to 54-year-olds, they had very unique concerns and levels of concerns around data privacy. For older people, unlike older people, this age group are present enough on digital media to be aware of the data issues at play and also be affected by them. But unlike younger consumers, they are not as confident or blasé about those issues. Now, suspicious advertising. This is much more likely to be malpractice rather than bad practice and includes things like hiding ads, misrepresentation, or even scams. Now, in 2021, influencer advertising was a significant driver of distrust amongst the young. However, increased consumer savvy alongside action taken by the ASA, the tech platforms, and indeed the influencer industry itself has greatly reduced concern in this area in 2023. However, advertising of bogus, counterfeit, or low-quality products on social media remains a universal concern, mostly associated with fitness, health, and well-being categories, as well as digital get-rich-quick schemes. They most commonly affect the young simply because the young are most commonly exposed to these sorts of adverts. And finally, scams. We know that scams significantly impact trust in advertising, and they divide public opinion. For many, scams and ads are one in the same. For others, Scams and advertising are different things but related. And even those people who make the distinction between scams and advertising are likely to have their views of advertising subtly coloured by the similarities between the two. Now that's pretty much it from me, and I'll let you get at the pastries, but I've just got 3 key takeaways before I let you go. The first is that enjoyment of advertising is the #1 driver of trust. How do we prioritise making emotionally engaging adverts that people enjoy? The second, bombardment is the #1 driver of distrust, and that has increased significantly for the youngest age groups in 2023. How do we improve their experience? And the third, the SA are already working hard to address many of the negative drivers that I've talked about here today. And we know that those people that recognise there is the right amount of industry regulation are more likely to trust advertising. So let's continue to work together to raise awareness of the SA and the great work that it does. And that's it. Thank you very much.